The morning sun peeked through the massive windows of a beautiful house in Silicon Valley, where a successful businesswoman lived all by herself. She had everything money could buy: a swimming pool that sparkled like diamonds, gardens that looked like they belonged in magazines, and rooms filled with fancy furniture. But something was missing, and she knew it every time she walked past the empty rooms. She had built her tech company from scratch, turning a small startup into a million-dollar business that helped companies protect their data. Despite having meetings with important people and making big decisions every day, she felt lonely when she came home. The house was too quiet, too perfect, and too empty. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, instead of heading straight home from work, she decided to volunteer at a community center in a nearby city. She had been doing this for a few months now, trying to give back to society in whatever way she could. That's when she heard laughter coming from one of the rooms, the kind of genuine, heartwarming laughter that makes you smile without even knowing why. Following the sound, she found 7 girls sitting in a circle, the oldest one reading a story to her younger sisters, making funny voices for different characters. Their clothes were clean but worn, and their hair was neatly braided, though some braids were coming loose. The social worker standing nearby noticed her watching and quietly shared their story. Their grandmother, who had raised them since they were babies, had recently passed away. With no other family members able to take care of them, they were about to be sent to different foster homes across the state. The thought of these sisters being separated made the businesswoman's heart ache. She watched as the oldest sister helped the youngest tie her shoelace, while another sister shared her last cookie with 2 others. That evening, driving back to her big empty house, she couldn't stop thinking about those 7 smiling faces. She remembered how the oldest sister kept her calm when the youngest one started crying, how they all worked together to clean up after their snack time, and how they seemed to communicate without words, just like a well-rehearsed dance. For the first time in years, her huge house felt unnecessarily big. The quiet that used to feel peaceful now felt wrong. She thought about her own childhood, growing up as an only child, always wishing for siblings to play with. She thought about all the guest rooms that had never hosted guests, the playroom she had built hoping to fill it with children's laughter someday, and the large backyard that had never heard the sound of running feet. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about how these 7 sisters might never see each other again if they went into separate foster homes. She imagined the pain of being torn apart from your only family, the confusion of living with strangers, and the sadness of not having your sisters to turn to when times got tough. By morning, she had made up her mind. She knew it wouldn't be easy. She knew people would question her decision. She knew her life would change completely. But sometimes, the best decisions in life don't make sense to others, they just feel right in your heart. She called her lawyer first thing in the morning. "I want to adopt 7 sisters," she said, her voice stronger and more certain than she had ever heard it. "Tell me what I need to do." She spent the next hour listening and taking notes, her determination growing with each passing minute. Looking around her house now, she didn't see empty rooms anymore. Instead, she saw possibilities: bedrooms waiting to be filled with dreams, a kitchen ready for family dinners, and a home eager to be filled with love and laughter. For the first time in years, she felt complete excitement about what the future might hold. The businesswoman's journey to adoption turned out to be more challenging than closing any business deal she'd ever handled. When she walked into the adoption agency for the first time, the social workers exchanged glances that spoke volumes. They weren't used to someone wanting to adopt 7 children at once, especially not a single woman who spent most of her days running a technology company. "Have you ever raised children before?" one social worker asked, peering over her glasses. The businesswoman shook her head but sat up straighter. "No," she admitted, "but I've been learning. I've been taking parenting classes every weekend, and I've turned my home office into a study room for the girls." She pulled out a thick folder filled with research, plans, and preparations she'd made over the past few weeks. Her own family's reaction wasn't much better. During a video call, her mother nearly dropped her coffee cup. "7 children? Have you lost your mind?" her mother exclaimed. "You've never even had a pet." Her sister warned her about the responsibilities, and her best friend suggested she start with 1 child first. But the businesswoman knew something they didn't. She had seen how these sisters worked together like a well-oiled machine. The way the older ones naturally helped the younger ones with homework at the community center. How they shared their snacks without being asked. The gentle way they braided each other's hair. These girls weren't 7 separate challenges. They were one beautiful family that needed a home. She threw herself into learning everything she needed to know. She spent hours watching tutorials about hair care, practicing different braiding techniques on mannequin heads until her fingers ached. She reached out to local community groups, asking for guidance about raising children whose experiences were different from her own. She wanted to make sure the girls would grow up proud of who they were and where they came from. Her determination started to change minds. The social workers noticed how she showed up every single day after work to spend time with the girls, never missing a visit even when she had important meetings. They saw how she took notes when the older sisters showed her their favorite hair products, and how she learned each girl's unique personality instead of treating them as a group. The girls themselves were cautious at first. The oldest one would stand with her arms crossed, watching every interaction carefully. The middle sisters would whisper among themselves, and the youngest ones would hide behind their older sisters when the businesswoman came to visit. They had heard promises before, and life had taught them that good things don't always last. But slowly, things began to change. It started with the youngest one, who one day ran up to show her a drawing she'd made in school. Then the middle sisters began asking for help with their math homework, their eyes lighting up when they realized she could explain fractions in a way that finally made sense. The oldest one finally cracked a smile when the businesswoman brought in a laptop and taught her some basic coding. The breakthrough came during one of their visits when the second youngest sister fell and scraped her knee. Without thinking, the businesswoman rushed to help, cleaning the wound and putting on a bandage while wiping away tears and telling silly jokes until the little girl was laughing again. That's when she noticed all the sisters watching her with different eyes, eyes that held a glimmer of hope. She transformed her house while waiting for the adoption to be approved. Each girl would have her own space, decorated in her favorite colors. She installed bookshelves filled with diverse stories, bought musical instruments when she learned 3 of the sisters loved music, and set up a mini basketball court in the backyard for the sporty ones. The day the adoption was finally approved, she couldn't hold back her tears. But they were nothing compared to the moment she told the girls they would all be staying together. The oldest sister's tough exterior cracked as she hugged her siblings, and for the first time, the businesswoman saw all 7 girls truly smile at her, not just with their mouths, but with their eyes. That night, as she looked at the stack of paperwork that made it official, she realized that sometimes the biggest obstacles lead to the most beautiful beginnings. She hadn't just gained 7 daughters, she had gained a whole new understanding of what it meant to be a family. The first morning in their new home was chaos in the best possible way. The businesswoman woke up early to make breakfast, only to find the oldest sister already in the kitchen, trying to make pancakes like she used to do for her siblings. Instead of taking over, she stood beside her and they made breakfast together, creating a new tradition in the process. Getting 7 girls ready for school proved to be an adventure all its own. The bathroom schedule they had carefully planned the night before fell apart within minutes. One couldn't find her favorite hair tie, another had forgotten to pack her homework, and the youngest burst into tears because her shoes felt too tight. But somehow, between the rushing and the scrambling, moments of pure magic emerged. The middle sister, usually quiet, surprised everyone by braiding her younger sister's hair perfectly while humming a soft tune. The oldest one packed lunch for everyone, remembering exactly how each sister liked their sandwiches cut. The businesswoman watched in amazement as they moved around each other with a familiar dance, even in this new space. Their huge house slowly transformed from a showpiece into a real home. The pristine white walls soon displayed artwork from school, family photos, and hand-drawn height charts. The formal dining room, once used only for business dinners, now hosted noisy family meals where everyone talked at once about their day. The spotless kitchen floor often had flour footprints from baking adventures, and somehow it looked better that way. Learning to be a family meant embracing the mess, both physical and emotional. The businesswoman quickly realized that her corporate problem-solving skills didn't always work with children. When the second youngest had a meltdown because she missed their grandmother, no spreadsheet could fix that pain. Instead, she learned to just hold her, to let her cry, and to share stories about her own grandmother until the tears turned to gentle hiccups. She hired tutors who looked like the girls, mentors who could share experiences she couldn't. The house filled with music from different generations, the smell of familiar foods, and conversations in multiple languages. She watched proudly as the girls taught her their grandmother's recipes, correcting her technique with giggles and patience. Bedtime became a special time in the house. What started as a simple goodnight routine turned into story time, with everyone piling onto the biggest bed in the house. The girls would share memories of their grandmother and slowly began adding new stories about their days at school, their dreams, and their fears. The businesswoman learned that sometimes the most important business meetings happened in pajamas, discussing a bad dream or a school bully. Not everything was perfect. There were arguments about bathroom time, complaints about chores, and moments when everyone needed space. The youngest once drew on the living room wall with permanent marker, and the oldest sometimes stayed silent for days when emotions became too much. But they learned to navigate these challenges together. One day, about 3 months after moving in, the businesswoman overheard the second oldest explaining to a friend on the phone, "No, it's not weird at all. It's just home." That evening, she found a handmade card on her pillow, signed by all 7 girls, simply saying, "Thank you for choosing us." She had to sit down for a moment, realizing that while she thought she was rescuing them, they were actually helping her discover what had been missing in her life all along. The biggest surprise came during a regular Tuesday evening. She was working on her laptop while the girls did their homework in the same room, something that had become their natural routine. The youngest one looked up from her math worksheet and casually asked, "Mom, can you help me with this problem?" The room went silent. It was the first time any of them had called her Mom. She looked up to see all the girls watching, holding their breath. With tears in her eyes and a steady voice, she replied, "Of course, sweetheart. Let's figure it out together." That night, as she walked through the house doing her final check, picking up stray socks, turning off forgotten lights, and kissing foreheads, she realized that success wasn't measured in business deals or bank accounts. It was measured in small moments, in shared laughter, in problems solved together, in tears wiped away, and in the sound of 7 different breathing patterns peacefully asleep under one roof. The peaceful rhythm they had built as a family faced new challenges as the teenage years arrived. The oldest sister, now in high school, started asking harder questions about identity and belonging. The middle sisters became more aware of how their family looked different from others, and the youngest ones picked up on tensions they hadn't noticed before. One afternoon, the businesswoman came home early to find the oldest sister sitting alone on the back porch, her eyes red from crying. A classmate had made a comment about their family during lunch. "They said I was lucky to be adopted by a rich person," she whispered, like that's all that matters. The businesswoman sat down beside her, their shoulders touching, and listened as years of buried feelings poured out. That conversation sparked a change in their home. They started having weekly family meetings, not just about chores and schedules, but about real feelings and experiences. The dining room table became a safe space where any topic was welcome. The girls shared stories about their school days, both good and difficult. They talked about friends who didn't understand their family, about feeling different, about missing their grandmother, and about their dreams for the future. The businesswoman learned to listen more than speak. When the second oldest daughter came home frustrated because someone touched her hair without permission, she didn't jump in with solutions. Instead, she asked, "How did that make you feel? And what would you like to do about it?" She watched proudly as her daughter decided to give a presentation to her class about respect and personal boundaries. Their home became a gathering place for friends from all backgrounds. The kitchen regularly filled with teenagers doing homework, making snacks, and having deep conversations about life. The businesswoman overheard discussions about college plans, career dreams, and changing the world. She smiled, knowing her daughters were growing into thoughtful young women who could navigate complex conversations with grace. But some days were harder than others. The middle sister went through a phase where she questioned everything about their family. "Why did you really adopt us?" she asked one evening, her voice sharp with teenage anger. "Was it just to make yourself feel good?" The words stung, but the businesswoman recognized the fear behind them. They stayed up late that night, looking through photo albums, sharing memories, and talking honestly about love, choice, and family. The youngest ones had their own struggles. One teacher suggested they should be in different classes to develop their own identities. The businesswoman fought back, armed with research about sibling relationships and the importance of keeping their bond strong. She worked with the school to create opportunities for independence while respecting their need to stay connected. Through it all, laughter remained their secret weapon. When tensions got high, someone would bring up the time the youngest had put bubble bath in the fountain out front, creating a foam party in the driveway. Or they'd remember their first attempt at making Sunday dinner together, which ended with ordering pizza and cleaning spaghetti sauce off the ceiling. These shared memories reminded them that they were more than their challenges. The businesswoman learned to celebrate small victories, like when the second youngest made the basketball team and all 6 sisters showed up to every game, cheering louder than any other family. Or when the middle sister won a poetry contest, writing about their unique family, reading it proudly at a school assembly. Each achievement belonged to all of them. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, the oldest sister mentioned she'd been interviewed for the school newspaper about her college plans. They asked who inspired me, she said, looking around at her sisters and their mom. I told them I had 7 role models right at home. The businesswoman felt tears in her eyes as the other girls nodded in agreement. That night, doing her usual rounds of the house, she found a notebook left open on the kitchen counter. One of the girls had written a poem about their family, different threads woven together, creating something stronger than before. She realized that the teenage years, with all their storms and struggles, were actually making their bonds deeper and more beautiful. Spring brought more than just flowers to their family's garden. College acceptance letters started arriving, and the oldest sister collected them quietly, storing them unopened in her desk drawer. The businesswoman noticed but waited patiently, knowing her daughter would share when ready. They had learned the delicate dance of patience and trust over the years. One Sunday morning, during their traditional family breakfast, the oldest sister cleared her throat. I got some letters, she said softly, pulling out a stack of envelopes. Everyone froze, even the youngest, who usually couldn't sit still during meals. As she opened each one, gasps and squeals filled the room. Harvard, Stanford, MIT. The letters kept coming, each one offering not just admission but scholarships too. The second oldest sister jumped up, knocking over her orange juice in excitement. Nobody even moved to clean it up, a first in the household. Read them out loud, she demanded, and everyone nodded eagerly. The oldest sister's voice shook as she read each letter, growing stronger with each acceptance. The businesswoman watched her children's faces, seeing pride and inspiration dawn in their eyes. But the real surprise came later that week. The high school principal called, announcing that the oldest sister would be valedictorian. We'd like her to give a speech at graduation, he said. Her story could inspire so many others. The businesswoman smiled, knowing her daughter had always been a natural leader, even if she didn't see it herself. The weeks leading up to graduation were a whirlwind of preparation. The oldest sister spent hours at the dining room table, writing and rewriting her speech. Her sisters took turns bringing her snacks and offering suggestions. Even the youngest one contributed, saying, "Tell them about the time you helped me learn to read." The businesswoman watched from the kitchen, her heart full at seeing them support each other so naturally. Graduation day arrived with its usual chaos. 7 girls getting ready in 3 bathrooms, everyone borrowing each other's makeup and hair accessories. The youngest 2 made a banner to hold up during the speech, and the middle sisters coordinated their outfits to match. They filled an entire row in the auditorium, the businesswoman sitting proudly with her 6 other daughters. When the oldest sister took the stage, the auditorium fell silent. She stood tall at the podium, her graduation robe perfectly pressed, her voice clear and strong. 4 years ago, she began, I didn't believe in fairy tales. Life had taught me and my sisters that happy endings weren't guaranteed. The businesswoman felt her younger daughters grab her hands on both sides. The speech wasn't just about academic success. It was about family, about believing in second chances, about the power of love to change lives. My mom taught us that family isn't about matching DNA or skin color, she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. It's about choosing each other every single day, through the hard times and the good ones. She talked about late-night study sessions where all her sisters would camp out in her room, pretending to help but mostly just providing moral support. about how her mom would leave encouraging notes in her lunchbox during exam weeks, just like she did for all her sisters. About learning that success wasn't just about getting good grades, but about lifting others up along the way. The businesswoman looked around at her other daughters during the speech. The second oldest was already taking notes for her own college applications. The middle sisters were wiping away tears while trying to pretend they weren't crying. The youngest two were beaming with pride, holding up their handmade banner that read, "Our sister rocks." After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos, a reporter from the local newspaper approached them. "Your story is remarkable," she said to the oldest sister. "Would you share what made the difference in your success?" The oldest sister looked at her family, her mom and 6 sisters all standing together, and smiled. "Everything I achieved," she said, "I achieved because I had them believing in me. When you have 7 people who never doubt you can succeed, failure isn't an option." That evening, they celebrated at home with a feast cooked by all of them together. The kitchen was a mess of pots and pans, laughter and stories filling every corner of the house. The oldest sister's graduation cap sat in the center of the table, surrounded by dishes that represented their shared history. Their grandmother's special recipe, their mom's attempt at soul food, which had improved drastically over the years, and the youngest's famous chocolate chip cookies. As they sat around the table, the businesswoman looked at her family with pride. The oldest sister's success wasn't just her own, it was a testament to all of them, to every homework help session, every late-night conversation, every moment of encouragement. They had all grown together, and this was just the beginning. The morning started like any other. The businesswoman was getting ready for an important meeting when her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Something was wrong with her company's main security system, the one that protected thousands of clients' data. Her heart sank as she read message after message about failing servers and angry customers. She rushed to the office, her mind racing. This was the kind of crisis that could destroy everything she'd built. As she walked into the emergency meeting, her phone lit up with a different kind of message, a photo from her oldest daughter showing all 7 sisters having breakfast together. Under it was a simple message, "We believe in you, Mom." That message changed everything. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt supported. She had faced bigger challenges, like learning to braid 7 different types of hairstyles or handling 7 different homework assignments in one night. This was just another problem to solve. But the real surprise came that evening when she returned home, exhausted and worried. She found all 7 girls in the living room, laptops open, papers spread everywhere. The oldest, now a computer science student, looked up. "Mom, I think I found something in your company's code," she said. She had been studying similar security systems in college and noticed a pattern in the error messages. The second oldest had created a spreadsheet tracking all customer complaints, finding a timeline that helped identify when the problem started. The middle sisters had been monitoring social media, gathering information about which features were affected. Even the youngest 2 had helped, making sure everyone had snacks and water while they worked. The businesswoman sat down, amazed. Over the years, her daughters had absorbed so much just by watching her work. They'd learned about problem-solving, teamwork, and never giving up. Now they were using those lessons to help save her company. That night turned into a family hackathon. The dining room became command central. The oldest daughter explained her findings to the company's tech team over video call, speaking confidently about encryption and security protocols. Her college professors would have been proud to see her applying her lessons in real life. The second oldest's data analysis revealed that the problem started right after a recent update. "Look," she pointed out, "the complaints all started within hours of this change." Her organization skills, developed from years of keeping track of her sister's schedules, were now helping track down a $1 million problem. The middle sisters, who had watched their mom handle PR crises before, drafted response messages for worried clients. They remembered how she always said honesty and clear communication were the best policies. "Tell them what went wrong, what you're doing to fix it, and how you'll prevent it in the future," they repeated her lessons. Even the youngest ones played their part. They kept everyone's spirits up with funny stories and perfectly timed hugs. When frustration levels rose, they reminded everyone to take deep breaths, just like their mom had taught them during their own tough times. Around midnight, the oldest daughter's eyes lit up. "I found it," she exclaimed. A single line of code, easily missed but crucial, was causing all the trouble. The company's programmers verified her finding, amazed that a college student had spotted what their team had missed. But they didn't know what the businesswoman knew, that her daughter had inherited not just her love for technology, but her dedication to never giving up until a problem was solved. The fix worked. By morning, the system was running better than ever. The crisis had turned into a triumph, but more importantly, it had shown everyone something special. The girls had grown up watching their mom build and run a company. They'd seen her handle problems, lead teams, and care for customers. Without realizing it, they'd learned these skills too. The business world was impressed. News stories praised the company's quick recovery and innovative solution, but they missed the real story, how a family had come together, each person bringing their unique strengths to help. The businesswoman's fortune hadn't just survived, it had grown, thanks to the trust her clients now had in a company that handled crisis with such grace. That weekend, they celebrated with a special dinner. To our first family business success, the oldest daughter toasted, making everyone laugh. The businesswoman looked around the table, realizing that her greatest investment hadn't been in stocks or technology, it had been in these 7 amazing young women who were growing into brilliant, capable adults. 20 years had passed since that first day at the community center. The businesswoman sat in her garden, watching her grandchildren play. Yes, grandchildren. Her family had grown in ways she never could have imagined. The sound of little feet and laughter filled the air, bringing back memories of 7 sisters who once ran through these same spaces. Her oldest daughter had become a tech pioneer, creating software that helped connect adopted children with potential families. She used her own experience to build something beautiful, understanding exactly what both sides needed. But more than that, she'd started a foundation that provided scholarships to foster kids who dreamed of working in technology. The second oldest followed her heart into law, becoming a fierce advocate for children's rights. "Every child deserves a chance at family," she would say in courtrooms, her voice strong with conviction born from personal experience. She worked tirelessly to keep siblings together in the foster system, remembering how close she and her sisters had come to being separated. The middle sister became a teacher, transforming her classroom into a space where every child felt valued. She had a special way with students who felt different or out of place. "Being different is your superpower," she would tell them, sharing stories about her own unique family journey. Another sister became a doctor, specializing in pediatrics. She remembered how scared she'd been of doctors as a child, and now she made sure every young patient felt safe and heard. Her waiting room was filled with books showing all kinds of families, and she had a special way of making nervous parents feel at ease. The second youngest pursued her passion for art, creating beautiful murals in children's hospitals and community centers. Her work always featured themes of family, love, and belonging. "Art helped me process my feelings when I was young," she would explain. "Now I want to give other kids that same outlet." The sixth sister became a social worker, bringing both professional skills and personal understanding to her work with foster families. She knew exactly what to say to scared children and uncertain parents because she'd lived both sides of the story. Her colleagues often said she had a special touch, but she knew it came from experience. And the youngest? She surprised everyone by taking over her mom's company, but with a twist. She expanded it into a non-profit arm that provided tech training to foster youth. "Success isn't just about making money," she would say at business conferences. "It's about lifting others up along the way." The businesswoman's home had become the heart of their extended family. Sunday dinners were noisy affairs, with partners, children, and friends all squeezed around multiple tables. The kitchen still got messy with too many cooks, but now tiny hands helped make the family recipes that had been passed down from their grandmother. One particularly special Sunday, all 7 sisters gathered in the garden for a family photo. As they arranged themselves around their mom, the oldest spoke up. "Remember when we used to be scared this wouldn't last?" she asked, making everyone laugh. The youngest chimed in, "Remember when we thought being different was a bad thing?" Then Mom looked at each of her daughters, now successful women in their own right. Each had taken different paths, but all shared the same core values: the importance of family, the strength of love, and the power of giving back. She thought about that lonely businesswoman she used to be, living in a big empty house, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the life these 7 amazing souls had brought her. Later that evening, as the grandchildren played a noisy game of hide and seek using the same hiding spots their mothers once used, the sisters gathered in the kitchen. They were cleaning up, falling into their old patterns of teamwork without even thinking about it. The oldest looked at their mom and said, "You know, people always say we were lucky you adopted us. But the truth is, we all got lucky that day." The businesswoman smiled, watching her family move around the kitchen. Success had come to each of them in different ways, through careers, through their own families, through their contributions to society. But their greatest achievement wasn't in their individual accomplishments. It was in the way they had maintained their bond, supported each other's dreams, and created a legacy of love that would continue through generations. As night fell and families started heading home, hugs and kisses were exchanged, plans were made for next week, and little ones were carried sleeping to cars. The businesswoman stood in her doorway, waving goodbye. Her house would be quiet again, but not empty, never empty. It was filled with 20 years of memories, with love that had grown beyond anything she could have imagined, and with the certainty that sometimes the best investments aren't made in the stock market, but in the hearts of children who just need someone to believe in them.